supplier that's watching and listening, Eric, and they understand, and I know they understand this conversation that you all are having. What do they do what do they do? How do you help them? How do they contact? They need help.
Right.
Doing what Duncan said, doing what you're saying, trying to execute this. So what do they need to do if they're struggling?
Well, that's a great question. I wish there was, and I can promise you, and I promise you too, Duncan, we've been trying to find the single answer, right, for many years. And when you look at when a supplier comes to them, it's like, what all do you do? Well, and I always get asked the question, can you send us a one pager? And that's like the biggest challenge of my lifetime, right? And I'm still trying to figure that one out. But the issue is that because suppliers are at so many different places at different times within the cycle of becoming accelerated in digital commerce, we've had to create lots of different offerings in different bundles and things of that nature, because every supplier has a different story and a different need, and their resource capacity is different. I mean, we've dealt with suppliers that have hundreds of people that are on the digital commerce team, some of them which might be locally and dedicated to Walmart, some that are mostly dedicated to corporate, to ones that they're they admittedly come to you and the first thing they say is we're short here. We don't even know what to do. To ones that are simply having problems just getting things ingested within the Walmart catalog, right? And they're banging their heads against the door on that. To some that have been using all kinds of third parties, but they just is not simply working at Walmart. And so, some of the more fundamental things that might be missing is catalog management, like I was talking about earlier, but then also not understanding how they're looking at on the search, on the shelf, to not understanding how they're paid and their organic strategy on their search strategy is working. Why are things not populating? To, hey, we're launching new products and we have seasonal rollover with our items. How do we ensure that when we launch these, they're going to be successfully launched in store, but how they're going to be looked at online to, all Duncan's points, right, digitally led consumers that are coming in. And if you have a brand new product, I mean, there's a lot of concern that you might not be able to find that product when it's first launched on the digital shelf. And so there's just a lot of different things that maybe a supplier is struggling with. And what we try to do our best is listen to really where they're at in the game. And we try to advise hey, well, this particular set of products and services that we have, software and services that we have, these are going to fit you best for where you're at this time. But the good news is, in almost all cases, is that we have a really long shelf life for them and a high ceiling for them to continue to just build their business with, at our company. And that's been a case study of ours for many times over with a lot of suppliers. They started out with a really fundamental basic need, and now they've grown into basically A to Z type of clients with us.
Yeah, I mean, I think about it slightly differently, Andy. Okay. And look, that's exactly what Eric had just outlined. We can supply all those services. But the way I've always thought about this stuff is, look, we for all the most important manufacturers, and in this case, Walmart is a very important manufacturer, is we have 2,000 people who wake up every day around the world, and all they do is think about how to integrate, build software, optimize capabilities, and maximize in the simplest way for a manufacturer to be able to perform in that environment. And so, we just have 2,000 experts that spend every single working hour they've got figuring out how to get the best results in these environments and work round, let's be honest about it, some of the limitations, the issues, the kind of vagaries, the nuances of how exactly Walmart.com works, right? Or how the app works, or how and so, what we're bringing to manufacturers is an access to a pool, a small army of expert software and capability, where what they get to do is do what they need to do, which is be as fast and efficient as they can be to sell product. And what we bring is the expertise to enable that onto the platform, with them spending the least of time having to be a deep technology or algorithm expert in what Walmart's system is doing.
To add to that, I like that perspective because it's true. I would say that probably the biggest pain point for all manufacturers I've seen in brands is time. I mean, digital commerce can just be an absolute time suck as a brand, right? I mean, it'll just draw out everything you got. And I've seen a lot of folks that have tried to apply different people that have an expertise in a certain area, especially in the brick and mortar side, in the Walmart case, right? Mm-hmm. Trying to apply that on the digital side, it's just a different animal, right? And they might spend, I've literally seen some brands spend 6 to 9 weeks on trying to find one answer for one minute problem about a content syndication issue that they're having, and they cannot get it to go live. But they spend 9 weeks doing that, and where they can come to us and we can solve that problem within 48 hours or 24 hours, even faster.
Perfect.
And because we're sitting there with that knowledge and that talent, right? And the tools to make it happen. And time is money. I mean, time is superbly precious right now. Right. I mean, I think the same thing with Walmart, right?
Right.
Which I think kind of is a good segue to the shoppers, the future, to your other question you're talking about, and following along with like the shoppers themselves. I mean, shoppers are demanding better value of their time, right? And all the technology that's coming, that they have available to them, the information that they can get, the choices that they can make. I mean, they're completely self-serving. They have the power, but their time is extremely precious. And so that's what's going to drive this whole digital commerce, at least from my perspective, is that as that shopper has more of that power and needs more time available, they're going to be making decisions not like what they used to, right? Because the ability to interrupt and to steal, like for a brand to steal loyalty from a consumer versus another brand, I think is kind of a point you were making earlier, Duncan. It's super fast. I mean, I know that me personally, I've made some brand decisions that where I used to be loyal to one, but I went to another one because this one just simply was available and it popped up and it looked right, and price is right, and I gave it a shot. Whereas used to, that would have been a harder choice for me to make.
You're right. Talk about a bit about that, Duncan. You mentioned briefly. I call it consumer or customer loyalty a bit. So as you look at the future, and retailers, manufacturers are competing together for this consumer, as you talked earlier about. So talk about the future a bit, how you see that, and how they see it playing out. Because if one of the things we have to do is continue to get better. We can't stand still, and we've got to continue to stay out front, stay ahead, in order to capture that consumer and that market share. So talk about that a bit.
Well, I think by just a starting point, Andy, and it's a great area to dive into, is that the next generation of consumer, which is people aged at the moment between probably 10 and 18, and the generation that's one ahead of them, which is let's say 20 to 30, their natural inclination is to start on a piece of glass in their hand. Yeah. It's not to start with, let's go Saturday morning and go to the store and start looking around, right? And so you're just starting from a switch in emphasis where generationally, we unfortunately are certainly, Andy, you and myself are probably, slightly more advanced than Eric.
I'm with you
guys. Kind of where, we started generationally with a view that, the access to computing just didn't exist when we were younger, and you grew up with a let's start with the store mentality, right? Age groups, go 2 generations on, they'll all be starting with a piece of glass in their hand, and that's what they'll start from. And so for a manufacturer, you've got to recognize that every single product, every single SKU that you put to market has now got to be marketed to a very high standard. Because every single one of them is now searchable. Every single one of them can do brand damage. Every single one of them, if it's not well presented, can force a consumer to be jarred. It's no longer the world where and also of course in digital world, people have an expectation that everything is perfect, right? It's kind of there's a whole new standard of expectation that's been set. Where they don't think that they walk in the store and obviously they'll be out of stock on certain things, and that would be acceptable because you can physically see it, and you may take a product to the left or the right. Now you've got to go through the effort of finding another one. So now if they've spent all that time searching for a product, they click on it and it's out of stock and they can't buy it, they're really disgruntled now because they've got to go back and start all over again. So I think just the mindset of being digital first, being e-commerce native as the mindset for a brand is almost the shift they've got to make in the way they think. Digital first, bricks and mortar second. And I don't mean that in a negative way to bricks and mortar, but I just think manufacturers have got to go through, got a 5-year window of really emphasizing that shift in their businesses, or they're going to find, 5-10 years from now, they become irrelevant in this space.
Well,
that is powerful, what you just said. And I'm digital first now.
Yeah.
And and I think most people are, like you said, so that you're right about the younger generation. They are my generation. We're coming down to that. I mean, we're moving up to that or down to that to become more digital, and that's where we're doing that's where I do most of my shopping today. And especially when I can get it tomorrow. Or you live in an area where you can get it delivered this afternoon. I mean, that's the new reality, right? It's coming quicker to you because companies are figuring out how to deliver that in multiple ways and things. And so if I was a supplier today, and you talked about what's current, but yet what's coming quickly, so the future is upon us, it sounds like to me. It's we talk about the future, but it sounds like it's here.
Yeah,
right?
it's already arrived.
Yeah,
right?
that's what I'm
already
saying.
arrived.
It's here. And you're late if you're not here with it and getting your organization to the point that you're talking about, that looking at that 7-inch screen, and so if you're not there, you're behind. Is that right?
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
I think you're at a time now where you need to be accelerating very quickly. And I think for many manufacturers, and rightly so, they've gone through a long window of thinking very carefully about not cutting the hand that feeds them. Right. So if you think about what I think Walmart has done more than anything, what's the real transformation? What was the big step change that Walmart's brought to the digital commerce world is the fact that you're no longer cutting the hand that feeds you by going digital first.
Right.
So there's no reason now to say, no, I don't want to offend my bricks and mortar retailer because, somehow they might not put my products first and I could lose sales, and that's the majority of my sales, and digital's not the majority of my sales. That argument I think was right pre-pandemic. Now, post-pandemic, I think that argument's gone. And in the case of Walmart, you're no longer cutting the hand that feeds you, right? As I say, you're now getting presented with 2 bites of the same cherry. Right. And so I think that excuse that people have been using around why are we not embracing this? Let's be cautious of this. Let's maybe not put up the whole catalog of our own products. Let's think about it. Yes, it is more work for a manufacturer to work digitally potentially than it is through bricks and mortar. There's much more selection that they've got to think about putting up onto these sites. But if you're not doing it, as Eric said, and even thinking beyond Walmart, the great American consumer now, within, as I say, 3 clicks, gets all the choice they want to get product, and that may well not be yours if you're not careful. And you've got to start changing that mindset to recognize that potentially as a manufacturer in the future, if you have a great brand and you have great products and consumers really do love them, what actually digital commerce is offering you is an ability to optimize your go-to-market and your ability to optimize your sales across multiple marketplaces in a real-time, here and now fashion. So you can directly affect the results of your company today, not just through a sales deal that you do with Walmart where you might get that 90 to 180 days from now. They're giving you an ability to run your business into the consumer. And I think you summarized it beautifully, Andy. Too many manufacturers think their customer is the retailer. Right. And what they've got to recognize, digital is creating an environment where as a manufacturer, you now have access to the biggest first-party data collection through retailers ever. And more they're going to have to give you more and more visibility and more insight to every one of those consumers for you to want to put more and more product through and stay loyal to that retailer, so that their competition is going up, and therefore your access to knowledge is going to go up. And so this is the greatest time there has ever been to be a manufacturer if you get on the front foot and embrace this, because over the next 3, 5, 10 years, what happened with Facebook and Google is about to be the digital evolution that's coming in e-commerce. And the opportunities it presents if you lean in are almost endless.
Okay.
Good stuff, huh?
Wow. I think I was thinking about, okay, how do we wrap this? I think Duncan just wrapped it.
He did.
He said, what's coming is a digital revolution.
Yeah.
And you all built a great case for that today, through your knowledge, through your content, and how you'll be able to come alongside the brick and mortar, come alongside the manufacturers, come alongside your consumers, and help them do what to get their products ready for that next generation, which is now. And that's urgent, isn't it?
It is.
I mean, it really is a sense of urgency. And I think if I was a supplier listening and watching with this podcast, I would run to get you guys and say, I need help. How do I do this? Because if you wait, you will miss this. You will absolutely get behind, and you have to play catch up. So, wow, Duncan, it was so great to have you. And your knowledge. I think I wish we had like 5 hours or something.
I know.
To Duncan, because I've learned so much within this quick time together today, Duncan, and your knowledge that you shared. And I now understand much more, Eric, the power of these two companies together now.
Well, thank you.
You know, and I can see why you're excited about the future of White Spider and Essential coming together as one. And the services and the content, the knowledge, the subject matter expert that you can bring into this to help. It's a wonderful conversation. Thank you both so much.
Thank you for having us, Andy.
Yeah, Andy, it's been a real pleasure to be with you, and particularly as you're such a Walmart legend. Thank you so much.
Well, I don't know about that.